Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. What a testimony this is right here to a man we all love, to a man who endeared this area that he loved. As we see pictures in remembrance and details a lot. Now, believe it or not, I do not remember this picture, but I know that it is. As we have an opportunity to reflect and an opportunity to honor Representative Otto Bean Jr. with a Memorial Highway from Highway 412 here in Kennett, Highway 25, from 412 in Kennett to Highway U and Z in Bernie. And I might say the signage is already up in Bernie. The road already travels better, him having been there previously. So we're honored on that. Let me share with you a short story, and then we have some other folks that are going to speak and talk about the fond memories that we have. As I started out visiting houses and areas in the district itself, I'd always heard that abracadabra was a magic word that opened doors. I soon realized that Otto Bean in 163 replaced those words. Not only was the reception greater, there was always a story that went with it. From a visit that he had encountered with the individual to a time that he helped the individual with an issue. He was a people person. He loved people and people loved him. He worked hard, he loved this job, and he did a good job. We're all better for it. A lot of things that are already in place, he laid the groundwork for. There's a lot of people that came together for all of this. I might identify to begin with the supporters for the signage itself. We thank you. For Tim Shaw and B.A.I.L.S, we thank them for allowing us the use of this room. For a friend for many years who identified that we were going to do something of this nature, and she said, "What can I do?" Marcia Haskell, we thank her also. Friendships are priceless. They can't be bought. They last forever. Today is a testimony of that. At this point in time, I'd like to start out with some people that knew Otto and have several things to share. I've heard a few of these stories. They're all eligible to be told. You don't have to cover your ears on any parts of them. A man that knew Otto, broke bread with him many, many times, traveled many, many miles with him. Mr. Caleb Davis, would you come forward, please? That is not my stomach growling, that is the microphone.
It's not easy. And really, today is a celebration of Otto's life. Otto was truly a man from all seasons. He was a devoted family man and a church man. He was an outstanding farmer. He was a great cotton man, and he served the cotton industry in all aspects. He really did. He was a wonderful legislator. He realized, and we've talked about this, to get anything done, you have to run both sides of the track. and he did it so very, very beautifully. He was probably the greatest facilitator of whatever that you want to call it, I've ever seen. But he can get everybody together and we get it done. This was Otto Bean. Godspeed, Otto. We miss you. Nobody deserves this any more than he does. Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. Our next speaker is the gentleman, not only was a friend of him, who served with him in the House also, Representative Swinger from the 162nd District.
Thank you, Representative Hampton. Well, I met Glenn O. Peterson years ago, and he said, "Do you know Otto Bean?" And I said, "No, I don't." He says, "You need to get to know him because he is one good guy." And then one day I was talking to Steve Atwell, and he says, "You know, the biggest problem is that Otto didn't start soon enough." He said, "If he had just started sooner, we'd all been better off." But I got to know Otto real well at the time we were in the legislature together, and when we were working on these different issues, particularly Bo Weevil, and I hope he knows now that the Bo Weevil's gone. But when we first started working on it, he said that the problem with Bo Weevil is when one of them dies, 10,000 comes to his funeral. But we were able to take care of that issue because, you know, Senator Mayor and Representative Wright and Representative Hampton, we have a pretty strong challenge because there's about 7 counties out of 114 that raise cotton, raise rice. But Otto had cotton growing right outside his office. He had a crop of it right outside his office. So he helped those other 107 counties understand what we do down here. But we all got to working together. We meet in the senator's office every week, and we figure out how to work together as a team. And that's what we do from our area. And the biggest accomplishment that I think Otto did while he was in the legislature, he jumped on this problem with the genetically modified rice. And he got to talking to me about it early. He got to talking to everybody else about it early. And I have never seen a lobbying effort any better than what the rice folks did. And a bunch of them are right here in this room. Paul T. Combs and David Haggard and a bunch of people were working on that issue and resolved it expeditiously because of the efforts were put in. But everybody liked Otto. He had this wonderful personality. He was warm. He was comfortable. He was charismatic. And as Caleb said, he just loved people and people loved him. And I think this is a fitting tribute to Otto Bean Jr.
Next, another gentleman not only befriend, but had the opportunity to serve with Representative Ott, Billy Pat Wright from the 159th District.
Janet, I remember when we first went to Jeff City, you and Otto became 2 of our very close friends. And some of the stories I recall, when you run for office, you know, when you're new, you really don't know what's coming down when you win an election. You don't know you've got to go immediately the next morning to Jeff City to be introduced in the caucus. So I get a call from Otto Bean when I ran, and of course I'm like 3 weeks out. The election had of course been held. So Otto says, "Billy Pat, I'm coming by to get you early, 5 o'clock, the day after election." I said on the phone a minute, and I said, "Well, Otto," I said, "I think we better wait till election is over before we do it." "No, you're going to win, you're going to win. I'm coming by after you." I said, "Well, we'll talk about it. Give me a call back later, Otto. Let's get a little closer here. Let's wait." So he called me every week. Finally, he called me, it was 2 or 3 days out. And you know, I don't know how you are, but when I did win, I told them they wanted me to announce before the election was over, I was ahead, that the election was over. I said, no, I remember Harry Truman. I'm not saying anything and doing until that close in. So he calls me again. He said, well, Pat, I'll be by day after tomorrow, 5 o'clock to get you. Have your suitcase packed. I said, Otto, please, let's wait till the election's over. I said, what'll happen if I lose? He said, well, I'll go by and get the other guy. But I don't like to play tricks, and I want to comment on it briefly, and I won't be long. But I think you'll like this. Otto, Janet, Otto was in the same apartment complex we were when we were up there in Janet. And then later, Otto was coming up a lot by himself, and back and forth. And Janet, of course, would be there, but he traded for a new truck. So we'd go down and I'd check on him every morning. I'd get up and be sure his light was on in his apartment. I'd go look over the banister. Sure enough, it'd be open, usually on early. Well, I looked down there in the morning, it wasn't on. Well, it kind of bothered me. So I go out and I was cleaning the frost off my vehicle, and I just cleaned all the windows, and the light still wasn't on. So I got on the other side of the car right by Otto's truck, and the truck started. I looked down to see if the light wasn't on. I looked in, it had these dark windows. I tried to look out, well, maybe he passed out in there or something. I couldn't see him. He opened the door, started laughing. He had one of them automatic starts. But folks, Otto on the floor was a gentleman. I think of Otto as a real slim Kentucky Fried Chicken man with gray hair. He was such a gentleman. Gail Kingery and Representative Kingery always called him Grandpa. And but Otto, I learned to love Otto and what he stood for. And we were on, as Representative Swinger mentioned, that Boll Weevil Bill is trying to steal our money one time for the Boll Weevil eradication program. So this lady didn't know anything about boll weevils or farming at all, and she saw all this money on their appropriation. She's trying to get it and move it over somewhere else. So she got up on the floor, and of course we started popping up on the floor, left and right. Pretty soon she looked around, she just sat down. Everybody was up, all of us were. But Otto was a gentleman, man of his word. I'll always remember how kind he was all. And when he spoke on the House floor, I guess when he kind of said his goodbyes, that you could hear a pin drop. And I won't recite that. I don't know if I can. But I'll always remember the respect they had for each other and his closing remarks. Just treat each other like you want to be treated.
Being fortunate enough to go to Jeff City, I thought, I'm not going to know many folks up here. But it was only a matter of a few minutes before people were seeking me out. They said, you're from the 163rd? I said, yes. And automatically, Otto Bean's name came up. He raised the bar very high for the rest of us. He treated everyone with respect. What more can we ask for? Everyone is of values that's on the face of this earth. That is something that continues to be a legacy. Another close friend and of the family for many years, Mr. David Haggard.
Well, I got to know Otto here. Some of you have heard me tell the story that my mother took us to the train station in Poplar Bluff to go to this military school, and it was quite a shock for me. I didn't want to go. I'd been assigned there. But when she saw Otto and his family at the train station, she said, would you look after David? I was a few years younger than he was. He said yes, and he did it to his dying day. If he made a promise, that was it. And I look around and look how much time's passed, and yet Ott's dear friends still cling because he was so unique. One of the most unique things about Ott was how he checked on his friends. And I bet all of you all have been checked on by Ott. He had some kind of a timetable in his head. He would come around and check on you about every 8 or 10 days, wouldn't he? If not more often. And he had people to see in Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois. He covered a big area. But Ott would always come by to see how you were doing, if you needed some help. And he would also bring a humorous story that would explain the times, and quite often a joke you've never heard before. And it would always be a good one. And Ott and Janet, when he got into the political life late, went to Jefferson City, and he did the same darn thing. And it just went over with everybody. Politics, you all, is rough when you get up there in Jeff City, is it not? I saw both sides' story and went around and patted everybody on the back just like he did down here. The difference was Janet took all the notes. So it was a team effort. If you crossed Ott, you were going to have to deal with Janet. But Ott certainly was a gentleman, as you all have said, and he tended to his flock of his many, many friends and tended well. His word was gold, and he was always upbeat. He was the kind of fellow, when you saw him coming, you were happy. When he left, you were sad. That's the Ott that we miss.
Our Congresswoman Emerson had planned to be here today, but due to some issues going on in Washington, was unable to be here. On her behalf, Darren Lingle.
Joanne is sorry that she couldn't be here today. She called me right before I got here today, and she was very emotional and very disappointed, and she kept stressing two things. She said, you have to tell them how much Bill and I love Ott. We loved Ott, and you have to tell them how much what he did made a difference. He truly made a difference. Long before he was in the state representative, he was making a difference in the lives of people that he worked with and lived with every single day. And Joanne says that this dedication is just a small way to honor his commitment and to honor the work that he was so good at doing. I've had the privilege of being around for over 10 years now working for Congresswoman Emerson. And one of the first campaigns I had the privilege to work on was Mr. Ott's. And I remember coming down to Kennett and going door to door. And we had a truckload of volunteers, and Joanne and Mr. Ott were together. And we set out down a city street, and I was with a couple other young people, and we got way ahead of Joanne and Mr. Ott, and we didn't know where they were. We couldn't find them. We circled back a couple of times, and here in a little bit, here they come out of a house. And so I didn't ask a lot of questions. I just went on, and later that evening, traveling back with Joanne, I inquired as to what the delay was. She said, well, that she needed to use the restroom, but that she was embarrassed to ask. But the next house, after she told Mr. Ott that, he just politely asked, and they went in, and she used the facilities, and they just, Mr. Ott knew the folks, and that's how, they sat down on the couch, and had a glass of tea, and so that was my first chance to get to know Mr. Ott, and I got the privilege to talk with him and meet with him many times after that. And for a young man starting out in this profession, he was a great example and someone I was privileged to know. And it's great that we can honor him here today.
Another gentleman that not only knew but had the opportunity to serve with him, our Senate Pro Tem, From District 25, Ron Mayer.
You know, thank you for having me here today to be a part of this. It truly is a special day, and I was thinking about what Dave had to say, and you know, it was so true. I mean, be around Otto Bean was just a joy. You know what I mean? It brought happiness and pleasure and fun. And you know, I'm thinking about it here. He's been gone now several years, and this group is gathered, and we think back fondly on him still, and we're having fun, and we have the utmost respect for him. You know, there's no doubt we lost a dear friend, you know, a wonderful person and a dedicated representative just a little over 4 years ago. And I agree with everyone else. It's fitting that we gather here today as a token of our appreciation and admiration for Representative Otto Bean. You know, as we've all said, Otto was one of a kind. And I can remember when he first came. Well, I remember getting a call in my office in Dexter one day, and I can't recall who it was, but anyway, they said, Representative Mayer said, we've got a gentleman by the name of Otto Bean that's running for state rep in the district south of you. Would you mind showing him around in Bernie? Because Bernie was a part of the district to which it is now, but being from Stoddard County, they wanted me to show Otto around. I said, sure, it'd be my pleasure. So we went around to several businesses, talked to some people that I knew, and you know, I really felt good about bringing Otto up there and seeing how he interacted with people. And this person called me back later that night, and they said, what do you think about Otto Bean's chances? What do you think, Representative? And I'll never forget this. I said, listen, if Otto Bean can meet everybody in that district, he'll win by a landslide. I said, he's that kind of person. And he did win. And I don't know that it was a landslide that first time, but I know the second time it was even a greater victory. And I remember Ott had those great jokes like Dave talked about. And I remember one day we got a chamber back behind the house. I still remember house members a little bit about the house. And believe it or not, I was from the house. But I remember there was a big discussion about education. It got really pretty heated and passionate back there. And so I thought, well, you know, I get enough of that anyway. So I kind of left out, and they were still debating. And I came back about 5 minutes later, and they were all laughing. I said, what's so funny? And they said, well, Representative Bean kind of got us back on the right track. And I said, well, what did Ott have to say? He said, well, he asked us, said, you remember the story about Johnny and having problems in school? And I said, no, I didn't hear that. I said, yeah. He said, Johnny's teacher asked him one day, who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Johnny shot back and said, Teach, you don't know. And she said, well, I'm going to give you one more chance. And he said, Teach, I just told you I don't know, and be quite candid, I don't really care. Oh, is that right? The teacher responded. Well, we'll see what your dad has to say about that. So we're going to call your dad in. So the next day, Dad comes in early in the morning with a teacher, and they sit down, and she says, Johnny, I'm going to give you one more shot. He says, all right, what are you going to do? Who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Johnny shot right back. I told you, Teach, I don't know and I don't care. Teacher thought, you know, looked over at Dad, said, see what I'm dealing with, Dad, here in the classroom? And Dad just paused for just a moment and looked over at Johnny and finally said, if you wrote the darn thing, fess up to it. But I had that ability to make you laugh and take away the tension that was in the room. And, you know, he served in the National Guard. He served his country in the Guard. He was a leader there, and people loved him and spoke highly of him there. You know, as was mentioned, he was a local leader for 4 decades before he ever went to the House of Representatives. You know, he was the kind of guy that could take these younger guys and settle them down and put everything in the proper perspective. And, you know, he pushed hard for local projects. I know he pushed hard for the boll weevil eradication program. He pushed for projects like the Kennett Hope Center, local business development. I remember he had a big issue over around the Culin area there along Highway 53 where the school was located, and he wanted to put safety lights there along that highway to take care of the kids. And he got that done, as he did so many other things. Great leader for agriculture. As I said, he had a cotton plant outside of his office, and you know, I've missed Otto Bean from the day he's left us. He was that kind of guy. I immediately
had a bonding with him, and I miss him so much to this day. And, to Ott's family, Janet, Jason, Barry, Claire, and little Otto, I thank you on behalf of the people of the 25th Senatorial District for sharing this wonderful man with us. And I'll just close by saying this. I remember years ago we had a pastor at our church that made a saying that stuck with me. And that saying was this: people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that exemplifies Otto Bean to a T. Not only did he have the knowledge, but even greater than that, he had a care and love for people that went beyond most people's bounds. And thank God for Otto Bean. Thank you all for allowing me to be here today.
Senator made a good point, and that's sort of follow up on a quote from Max Lucado. It's not the title that makes the difference. It's the concern that makes the difference. And I've had that for each and every one. Are there others here in the group today that would like to say a few words? If not, I would ask Janet and the family to come forward at this point in time, and we would like to present them with a copy of the bill. And trust what little I know about any of it, a man, a candidate, or anything else goes very short distance without a supportive family behind him. I have had the opportunity to meet a lot of this family, and the support is quite evident. And I know I'd gain strength through it also, as I do with mine. So it is my pleasure to present a copy of the bill designating Highway 25 from 412 here in Kennett to Route U and Z in Bernie as the Representative Otto Bean Jr. Memorial Highway. And if you'll notice, there are several bills that are combined. The language to ensure that this was going to be on is on 2 of them. There's no reason to take a chance with one, but I will say this. Each and every representative, each and every senator was above board and so supportive of it. So it is with pleasure that we present this to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other distinguished guests, put on my glasses, I might can see you. When you go through the car wash and those lights are flashing, telling you what's happening to your car, Ott just whispered in my ear, hot wax now being applied. He loved that sign, and that's what he would say about this, is hot wax. When Ott was in high school, he was an outstanding basketball player. I'm sorry, my voice is trembling. I'm just too overcome. And he was called the star of the team. And we have a whole box full of clippings of the pictures with him leaping up and making a basket, and the paper would read Dean scores, and on those little shorts, those little tight 1950 shorts. And so that was his reputation, was as a basketball star. He was very good at it, and he loved it. And as the years went on, and people would come up and they'd say, I remember when you played basketball, you were so good, it was so much fun to watch you. And he would always say, I was a member of a team. I did not do that by myself. I could not have made those goals, those baskets, if my team hadn't maneuvered the ball to me. And don't ever forget that it took a team. And that is the way he would feel about what you all are doing here. I look out there and every one of you were his team, and he loved you as family. If I start naming names, I'm really going to tune up. So it's going to be hard for me to name all of you. David and Judy Hazard, you know, you were lifelong support, best friend, open your home, your wallet, whatever was needed. You were there with it. Jerry Paul, Eckie, same thing. We would have never been there without you. I've got a story to tell Paul T. about where his campaign money went. Just so many of you. All of Ott's friends at the Delta Center. Caleb, couldn't wait to have the next joke with Caleb. Always thinking up with the next joke with Caleb. So you all were his team. He loved you, and he loved being part of your life, and you being a part of his. It was teamwork. That was what it was for him. Ben Bradshaw, old friend from Gideon. I am surprised Gideon is still standing and that you all are in prison. They were some pretty rowdy boys, and somehow they overcame and grew up to be fine, productive gentlemen. And thank you for your lifetime of friendship. Aunt's sister Alma and her husband Ken adored him and supported him in every way. Marcia Haskell, thank you for being here. Now, allow me a couple of brief other things about two unsung heroes that you don't hear much about. Jared Brown was assigned to Ott as soon as he signed on the line that he would become a candidate. And Jared showed up with information and a plan and started us out. He was the tour guide. And he and Ott bonded. A lot of people, when we'd be somewhere, they would think that Jared was Ott's son, and he never corrected him. He was very happy that Jared Brown was another son, and he became a part of our family. And sometimes the day you told me I had to put on a t-shirt and jump up on a bale of hay, a 60-year-old woman with privacy issues, it kind of strained our friendship, but you were right and I got over it. And then my dear friend Marla Gill, every time, as soon as I called me that he was on his way to Jeff City, someone was driving him 80 miles an hour, sorry, afraid he would back out. And I curled up in the fetal position and pouted for a while. And then I went to Braggadocio and called my friend Marla Gill to meet me at Dairy Braswell's and let's have a cheeseburger and I need to cry on your shoulder. She said, Janet, get over it. I'll help you. We'll make it, son. And she showed up. I don't think we ever had a parade. Jared, those darn weenie roasts you made us have. All the chicken dinners, the fundraisers, and the doing and the behind-the-scenes work. My beloved soul sister, Marla Gill, came through, and she and Jared and I became a little threesome. Ott told me one time he was up speaking, and he said, you and my other son and my other wife were being rowdy back there. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to disturb you. He said, no, I just wanted to know what was so funny. I wanted in on it. So lots and lots of good memories. And Jared and Marla, you were the wind beneath our wings. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Speaking of setting the bar high, I think every one of us in this room would have a Joanne Emerson story or a Bill Emerson story. They came to our area and changed politics as we knew it. They changed the whole way the game was played, and we're all the better for it. So our love and thanks to Congressman Emerson for setting the example. She's still doing it, still doing a fabulous job. And even though Congress has a bad reputation these days, we're proud of our member. Thank you for driving from Memphis, my sweet friend Marilyn. I don't know, I'm going to miss somebody if I start naming names. but our family thanks you so very much. And I did want to tell Paul T. that I disagree with somebody who spoke about the Rice deal. I saw a little bit of a different story. I was in the Capitol, in Ott's office, and they were meeting late, and he called me when the chemical company was determined to bring the experimental plot of rice to the boot hill. And all the farmers up north and our governor and his administration were so thrilled because that was going to make Missouri a state-of-the-art state with in ag research. Not that Jake Fisher hasn't already done that, but anyhow, I talked to Paul T. and others and found out what this was going to do to our rice farmers. So he immediately, I don't know what all he did, but I know he immediately went to work. It was in the process of happening. And I think at Senator, then Representative Mayer's nudging to tell him how to do it, threw a monkey wrench into the works of what was going on the floor to stop so that they couldn't proceed on. Well, almost immediately, someone from the governor's office came and they leaned over Ott. And he got up and exited the chamber. Well, he gave me a quick call on the cell phone and he said, I've just been called to the principal's office. He said, if you hear gunfire, hide under the desk. And the house photographer saw him come out, and he adored him, liked to follow him around. So there's a picture up here that was at 10 o'clock at night with Ott outside the governor's office. You couldn't invite him in because he had the chemical guys in there ready to do the deal. And if you will look at the body language and what was happening, that was the end. We didn't hear any more about the rice deal. That was at 10 o'clock at night. So, Paul T., that's your campaign contributions at work. So, we thank you for our family. I would say this honor belongs to all of you. He would say, y'all step up here and carve your initials on this sign. I know MoDOT, that's illegal, but that's what he would say, is this honor belongs to all of you, that he was just a member of the team and he loved doing it. And we thank you for giving him that privilege. He told several people it was a great way to top off a life. And I thank Jason and Desi Bean for giving us a new little Otto Bean. And we begin again. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We're going to get this straight. If you've got any questions for me, I defer to Janet. She does a better job than I do. She is very up on her game. At this point in time, we would like to unveil the sign that you will be seeing right here living 412 here in Kennett. And we just put that on this side.
Yeah? Perfect.
We don't conclude today.